Hello, welcome to the video. I'm going to start by saying straight away, I am under no illusions that I'm very good at this. I will start to waffle, I will lose track, I haven't got any notes, and I'm not going to edit anything. I'm just going to talk and see what comes out. I do have a topic in mind though, which is basically to show you my usual setup for DJing, small bars, clubs, usually weddings, private events, stuff like that. Focusing though on my backup solutions, so my plan B and even my plan C, what I would do in certain situations. Like I say, I don't really do YouTube or anything like that very often, but what's prompted this is seeing quite a few people, not just beginners, but people asking what people use as a backup. You tend to get the same responses saying, if you're using a laptop, have a backup laptop. Well, I get as frustrated as anyone else with that generic response because it's not an option for a lot of people. It's not a practical option for a lot of people, and it's actually quite a bit of an overkill depending on what else you have available to you. So I'm not trying to tell anyone how to suck eggs. I'm not telling you to do what I do. I'm just saying there's loads of options. These are a couple I have that get me through different scenarios depending on what potentially would go wrong. Main thing to start off by saying though is have a backup. Just have a backup. I went to rescue a DJ whose laptop packed in halfway through the night during a wedding the other week. They had no plan B. They were left completely stranded. Luckily, I'm just 10 minutes around the corner from the venue, and I went and took over. You just don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be in that situation. I'm coming from a position of a lot of years of experience of using, vinyl originally, believe it or not. Vinyl, CDs, through to computers, and a mix and match between the two on occasion. And I've been in positions where things have gone wrong. Luckily, I've never been in a position where I couldn't do anything about it. So I'm trying to help people by recording this. Maybe you can get some ideas for yourselves. If you spot anything that you want to give me a tip on, honestly, absolutely fine. This is what I've got so far. It's all work in progress. And there's always room for improvement. So to begin with, what is my usual setup? How much stuff am I taking with me? Might seem a lot to some people, but I've got this big bag here, which is a really nice bag. Really, really like this. And a generic kind of business laptop rucksack with various bits in. So they're the two things I take. I've just took this out of there. That goes in there. So in here I've got, I don't need these all the time, but I've got some XLRs. My laptop stands in there. I'm not going to set it all up. I'm just going to show you what I need to show you. I always have my own power supply. It's got the surge protection on there and some USBs that are quite handy. You never know what you're going to be presented with when you turn up to places, so it's good to have those and those in case you need to extend the length of whatever's there. Backup of my hard drive, so that's backup number one. Some other bits and bobs, cables, stuff like that. Anyway, over to the main bag. So I primarily use, I always use Traktor. My Traktor software is running on my MacBook, which is in here. Check out the footwear. Let's just get that out of the way. I'm going to apologise right now for that. My music's on a 1 terabyte SSD. I've already showed you I've got a backup of that hard drive there that I do back up fairly regularly. Not every gig, but now and again. My controller, it is an S4. I've had the various versions of the S2. One big advantage this one has, other than being an overall more functional controller with more channels, is this will work as a standalone mixer, as a standalone analog mixer, not a standalone player like a Denon Prime, but without the laptop connected or without the software running, this does function as a mixer, whereas the 2-channel versions I had previously don't. So there's one kind of point you need to think about. As I go through this, I'll kind of try and point out the things, like my thought process and what you need to cover yourself for. If you are running a more basic controller that is just a controller, that doesn't allow additional inputs and outputs, you seriously need to consider having a standalone mixer as well, I think. Not so critical for me with having this, but I've always used one, and I do prefer it for various reasons that I will explain. But if your laptop software, whether it's Traktor, Serato, Virtual DJ or whatever, if that ceases to exist, if it crashes or whatever, what can you do with your controller? Ask yourself that. Can you use it to plug other things into? If you can, great. If you can't, that's a problem that needs a solution. I'm not saying go and get another controller. A 2-channel controller with no inputs is absolutely fine, as long as you accept the limitations and you have a plan B. My plan B here is this. So the most likely thing and the most common issue you see when something goes wrong is the software crashes. Now, it may crash and fail entirely. It might refuse to run in the first place, or DJ software sometimes, and it doesn't matter which one you use, they all have their various issues. It might develop some sort of issue that requires a restart. It might be working, but you might lose half your library. Your library might not display properly. One deck might not play, and you'll be down to one deck, or something along those lines. Various situations can come up where you might want to restart your software, which isn't a bad situation to be in if you can play something else. At least you're planning to restart it. If it crashes randomly, you also need to be able to switch something over relatively quickly just to avoid the dreaded silence, and that's the first thing. So when I set all this up, I've got my MacBook, my controller. I also plug this into the headphone output of the laptop. Goes into a spare channel on here, which is why I really like this mixer. It's small, but it has 2 stereo channels. A lot of mixers like this will have lots of microphone channels, but not many of these. So it's quite a nice little unit. Excuse me. Yeah, so this would be turned down. My main input from my controller would be coming through here. And what I do is I open VLC, media player, you can use whatever you want, in the background, and I'll put like a hour-long master mix, continuous mix, and I will already play it, and it will be on a loop. So there's always something playing coming out of the headphone port on the laptop in the background. It doesn't use any processing power as such. It's not going to affect how well Traktor runs. It's perfectly fine to do that. It's not like you're running some sort of video editing software in the background or anything like that. Absolutely fine. And if Traktor was to suddenly just freeze or lock up and I didn't know what was going on, I can quickly just go, whoop, and you've got music. And I will pick one of the master mixes depending on what I'm doing. 80s, 90s, Christmas, whatever. It might be a little bit of a random change from what was playing before, but it will be in keeping. And people will get over the initial shock of the song randomly changing halfway through very, very quickly. What they won't get over very, very quickly is 20 or 30 seconds of silence whilst you're stood there fumbling around. So that's option 1. Quick and dirty, another music source playing from the laptop. Now, that assumes the laptop is still up and running. which if it is, great. Assuming my main hard drive is still functioning, I have got access to all my music and I can play it in VLC. I can't mix. There might be a bit of a break between songs. Let's face it, I've seen wedding DJs who actually play that way anyway as standard, with basically just playing like a playlist. So it still wouldn't be that terrible compared to what some people's actual standard is anyway. But I wouldn't enjoy playing the majority of the night that way. If it happened half an hour before the end, I might live with it. It's certainly a good solution though, that if the software needs a minute just to restart and then you're going to go back to it, just switch on to VLC or whatever in the background, media player, and then switch back. Option 2. Now this is if you've got a massive failure of the laptop, if it physically breaks or if it gets vandalized, damaged, knocked off the stand, someone throws a bottle at it. If it is completely dead, then I've got a problem. Now, yes, I've got this as a mixer. I could plug my phone into this. I could run Spotify. Again, regardless of the legal issues with that, I'm not going to get into that. It's not what this is about. This is about technical solutions and practical solutions. It's not a good way to DJ for a few hours. You're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to be able to browse your music and play it in the same way and keep the flow of the party going in the same way that you know you can. What my next solution is it's an option that is completely independent of the... I keep on pointing to my laptop because that's where it would normally be. The laptop and controller. If all of this was out of action, I can switch to a complete standalone system and continue to play much in the same way that I normally do. So I'm just going to get this out of the way. So, and it's small and it's compact. So in this bag, as well as cables, I have this pouch which I have already emptied, and that's what comes in the pouch. So what you're looking at here is the Apple Lightning to USB, the camera adapter they call it. This is a USB hub, quite a fancy one I admit, with an SSD. So not only have I got my main SSD, my backup over here, I've got another backup which is actually already plugged in, ready to go to my phone. Now this is where things get interesting. So this goes into my phone, and the backup solution on my phone is the Algoriddim DJ app, which is actually really good. Been considering swapping over to it for my main system for a while. There's a couple of small issues I won't get into, which is why I haven't done that yet, but it's on the horizon. It's something I'm considering. I really do like it, especially on the phone. It's absolutely incredible what it can do considering it's running on a phone. So yeah, I've got this in a bag, all hooked up like this, all the cables sorted. I need to just bang that into the power. That gives me power to the hub, which in turn provides more than enough power to the SSD, whereas you won't get enough power through one of these. No matter what you put into it, it powers the phone then passes power back through the USB. You might not have enough power to run a hub, anything else you might plug into it, so it's better to have its own power supply. So this is all ready to go. Grab that out of the bag, plug it into your phone, power, and then hidden behind here we have a little Bluetooth and 2.4 gig wireless keyboard with Android, Windows, iOS mode. That was about £6 or £7. Absolute little bargain that was. And this, isn't this cute? It's like a little baby version. Yeah, I mean, when these things first came out a couple of versions ago, they were a little bit of a toy. This is still nowhere near the same level of quality as this. Remember, it's a plan B, it's a backup. But this is a backup that I can do practically everything I can do on that, other than, 4 channels, remix decks, all that type of stuff. You can still do loops, you can still do effects, although you have to use a touchscreen. People who can scratch, I'm not one of them. People who can scratch on these. The reason I went for this one over the Hercules version actually has a filter and a bass control. This has got no EQ and no filter, but this does have library browsing. You pop that, opens up your list. You can go through playlist and load deck left and right, which is what I thought about this. As a DJ who likes mixing, the other controller, the Hercules one, can do a little bit that this one can't. But considering this is a backup, I'm going to be in a situation where this has all gone completely tits up, and I just want to play the rest of the night without incident. Having some controls for the library browsing and deck loading was more important. So that's why I went for this one over the Hercules. So that goes into your phone. Got some more cables in here. So that goes from the controller into the hub. Now this, it's not just a controller, this is a full audio interface as well. So you've got your main outputs and headphones. I've got my HD25s that have a small plug with the adapter on, so I can use those on there nice and easy. And then from the 3.5mm output, you go to your mixer if you've got one. So obviously I would connect that into there. If you didn't have that, you would use whatever adapters, and make sure you've got adapters to do. That's the other top tip, I think. Half of this bag is adapters. Phono to 1/4" jack, 1/4" jack to male XLR, female XLR, there's just everything you could possibly need to go from anything to anything else. If you've got that in your bag, then you're not going to come up against many situations that you can't deal with. So yeah, basically, go and have a look at the DJ app if you've not seen it before. I can't obviously show you it right now, it's on my phone. This, as soon as I turn this on, it links straight up to my phone. It's already paired. It just makes searching for tracks. I think is it spacebar return, launches you straight into the track library. You just search, load left, load right. It's so much better than having to mess around on your phone screen. And with this little bundle here and my phone, I would be quite happy that I could provide my full, normal quality of service for a wedding or a birthday party, that type of thing. I wouldn't be doing anything on there other than a little bit more fancy mixing on occasion that you can't do on here. So that leads me on to option 3. 18 minutes so far. I'll try and keep this last bit short. That's a nice solution, but I am under no illusions that it costs a bit of money. 60 quid, 25 quid a year for the software, 6 or 7 quid. These are normally about 45 quid, but I got this for 20, this adapter. It's the official Apple one. I wouldn't trust a knockoff one, to be fair. Not when you're using it as a backup. You need it to work every time. 50 quid, 40 quid. So yeah, there's there's a few quid worth of stuff in there, but it's a nice, fully functional standalone backup. Now on to my cheap option. This thing. This is a 10-year-old tablet. I've had this for a long time. I've considered getting rid of it many times because I don't really use it. But I remembered a long time ago finding this app, and I wasn't sure it would still exist, but it does. It's still around. This hasn't changed for years. It's a very, very basic thing. But if you haven't got the money to spend on something like this, and you certainly haven't got the money to buy a spare laptop, consider this. Now, this app only works on Android, so I'm running it on this Samsung. This tablet is worth no more than 20 quid. It's old, it's out of date, hasn't got a lot of memory, but it doesn't need it, because this app, it doesn't have a library as such. It's not building a database, it's not analysing your tracks, it's not doing waveforms, there's no effects, there's no BPM. So it doesn't need a lot. It can run on the most basic of Android device, and it will run really well. So I've got a 64 gig memory card in here. It is a SanDisk because it's one I actually bought for my drone. It's a 25 quid SD card, but you can get another brand for 7 or 8 quid for the same 64 gig storage, and it'll do you just fine. So you've got a 20-30 quid tablet, a cheap memory card, and this app is free. You can pay for a pro version, and then you get pitch control. There you go. And I believe then you can use these as kind of touch sensitive jog wheels, but you don't need it. There's no... If it came to using this would be like a real get out of jail situation. I wouldn't even be plugging headphones in. I would just want a good selection of tracks, which is what we've got here. Now I have on the memory card put every Now album, again, into folders in groups of 5, just because I didn't want a never-ending list of playlists. And I've actually got them all in another playlist. So that is every song off every Now album. Now, if it all goes wrong and your main system goes wrong and that goes wrong, and if you didn't have something like this with another full SSD of music, 64 gig memory card, and it's still not full, and it's got every Now album in 320 kilobit quality, that is enough. You could turn up to most general sort of parties and get away with this. I dare say I could turn up with this and do a fairly decent job. But as a backup, it's really good. Much better than trying to play from Spotify. You can't rely on having an internet connection or Wi-Fi. You shouldn't be relying on streaming as a backup. Use it in your main system in addition to having your own physical copies of your digital music. But why would you rely on streaming as a backup when it's the last thing that you have to save yourself from a lot of awkwardness and embarrassment? Yeah, so it's really basic, but it does what it does well. So if I just go on to this, you can do some basic stuff like shuffle and then play, and it goes straight into like an auto mode. If you don't like the song that comes on, just hit next, and you can even catch it before it's got all the way across because it's loaded up the next one. Exit that at any point. Other than that, you can do a search on Jovi, for example. Hit that button, and you just kind of drag, and they play instantly. Because it's not doing the analysis that your main software probably does. It's not building up a waveform or detecting keys or BPMs or anything like that. It's just playing the file. So as a backup, it's really good because it requires not a lot of processing power, and I would, put an amount of money on saying this is bulletproof. Your Traktor Serato Virtual DJ is much, much, much more likely to crash than this thing is, considering this is a free app that's been around for probably 10 years. It's incredibly stable and it's incredibly basic, and it's just playing music, but letting you navigate and search for your music in a bit more of a hands-on way than something like Spotify would do, without all the advanced, BPM sync and effects and everything like that. But what else do you need? So I'll finish off basically by saying, if the reason you haven't got a backup is because of cost, because you thought the only option was to replicate your main system, have a spare controller, have a spare laptop, there's no excuse now, because this is a very, very cheap tablet. This will run on any Android tablet that exists, honestly, on anything. You could even run it on your phone. If your phone has an SD card slot, then put it on your phone. It's a free app. It's called Party Mixer. And in addition to this and this, I am always going to have this little thing in the bag as my third option. So yeah, I've gone on a little bit, almost half an hour. I go into a bit of detail, I realise, but there you go. Any questions, just ask.